when we look at the capabilities of today, if we instead look at the trajectory that technology is going on, as business leaders, we need to say, just because it's not possible today, how do we set ourselves up for the success when that is available to us? And that mindset shift is a leadership shift. That's a cultural shift that needs to happen.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators Podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. Today, we're going to be demystifying AI through storytelling with our special guest, Ramy Nassar. Ramy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Seth. Great to be here with you.
It's great to have you. Congratulations. You just had an addition to your family, a young boy. Healthy and happiness to you and everybody in the family.
Thank you. Day 4. We're doing great.
Day 4, but who's counting? Just remember, you've been down this road before. It changes along the way, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Ramy, I want to get right into it. I want to thank our listeners, our viewers who have come back. Appreciate you returning. For those that are first timers, thank you so much. Artificial intelligence is something you know a great deal about, not just because on an intellectual or academic level you're studying. You actually use it and you build things, and they get used in business and in real life. And I'm a testament to that. We'll talk about that later. But what do meeting professionals need to know about AI? Are the misconceptions about AI? Are some of the misgivings or fears of AI that need to be spoken to from your perspective?
You asked 5 questions there. Let's unpack that a little bit. So the first thing is the technology is here. I've been doing this for the better part of a decade, and I remember my first keynote, 2016. It was called Why Data Scientists and Designers Need to Be BFFs, Best Friends Forever, speaking about product design, user experience design through an AI lens. No one had a clue what I was talking about. AI wasn't a household term. It is now. And so the pivot that's happened over the last 18 to 24 months is that we're finally done talking about, whether that's keynote presentations, workshops, conferences, we're finally done talking about theoretical use cases. What meeting professionals need to be thinking about and looking for is real data-supported, evidence-driven examples of this stuff in action. Because I don't know about you, I'm for one tired of, well, you could use it for this, or you could use it for that.
Right.
So I've got a little bit of a weird rule. I don't speak about case studies where I didn't build something. So I don't speak about case studies because I read an interesting article about how company X is using technology Y to drive whatever metrics. I don't care. I'm not a consultant. It's not what I do. I instead personally just love building stuff. We've built some stuff together over the last few months, and it's been quite impactful. I built stuff with the clients I work with. And the one big takeaway is the bar has been lowered in terms of what it means to build real working solutions with the technology of today. And now there's a spectrum of solutions. And the words automation and AI, sometimes we get using them interchangeably. They're vastly different. There's a bit of a spectrum there. There's some overlap for sure. And we are just at the earliest stages of this stuff. That's the one thing I always remind people of. ChatGPT, and I'm going to use that term the same way people call it Kleenex. When we ask for Kleenex, we're actually asking for facial tissue, not necessarily the brand name Kleenex. ChatGPT, I'm speaking about large language models, foundation models. You could swap in Copilot, Gemini, Claude. It doesn't really matter. ChatGPT was launched, at least publicly, November 30th, 2022. It is not even 3 years old yet. It's a toddler. I've got a toddler. I've got a just over 3-year-old. They're great. They can do a lot, but they're not mature yet.
Right. They're fascinating.
They're fascinating. They're fun. They're interesting. So the biggest mistake I see, the thing that drives me insane, I'm going to try not to swear today, is when we look at the capabilities of today and assume those to be the capabilities of tomorrow. And what I mean by that is there was a really interesting experiment a group of researchers published about a month ago, and it made me very upset. They ran an experiment. I know what they were trying to do, and they tried to run a company built on a whole bunch of AI agents talking to one another. It was a disaster. It didn't work. So they had an HR agent, a finance agent. They just kind of said, all you agents go run this business together. And they said, look, this doesn't work. Okay, true, it doesn't work in 2025. But a year ago, even the term AI agent wasn't in our vernacular.
Right.
So if we instead say, cool, this was a failure, but look at the progress and extrapolate that progress. I'm a futurist, I'm a foresight person by default, not necessarily just a technology person. If we instead look at the trajectory that technology is going on, as business leaders, we need to say, just because it's not possible today, how do we set ourselves up for the success when that is available to us? And that mindset shift is a leadership shift. That's a cultural shift that needs to happen. And then organizations truly become unstoppable and they start to future-proof themselves with respect to technology. That's what I love to see in sort of the clients and organizations I work with.
Speak a little bit more to that mindset shift, that, our audience needs to make right now to kind of, I don't know if it's cliche, stay ahead of the curve or, my sense is there are so many, there's junior, senior, Luddites, high tech nerds, and, there's fear of I don't know enough or it's going to take my job. Speak to that mindset shift.
I say mind shift all the time in meaning to say mindset shift. So pick whatever cliche you want. Genie is out of the bottle, toothpaste is out of the tube, train has left the station. The technology, I believe, is here to stay. It's no longer, testing the waters with it. So that's
the horse is out of the barn.
Horse is out of the barn. Cars left the start line. I don't know. We could probably make some others up. That decision's already made for us in the sense that we're no longer watching and waiting from the sidelines, which 18 months ago is what senior leaders were doing. They were trying to see, is this AI thing going to be for real? Is it going to take off? Is it going to fundamentally shift our business? I would say fairly conclusively, yes, we're there now. So the second question becomes, how do you instill that cultural shift, which is typically, to me, a leadership, a top-down shift in thinking into the organization? How do you encourage the spirit of experimentation? I work with one organization that took a dramatically unique approach, one that I initially don't even know I agreed with. And then as I saw it take root, I've now encouraged other organizations to do the same. And what they did was they said, we're going to be an AI first company. We're going to solve problems with technology first. We still value our people. It's not about job replacement, but we want our people to work smarter, faster, more efficiently. There are things where technology can do it better than we can. The way we are going to create that cultural shift, we're going to let everyone experiment. And I actually kind of encouraged, I was like, maybe you should dip your toes. They said, no, everyone go nuts and do it. In fact, they were even fine with multiple people in different business units or different functions doing the same work, which typically as an organization, you try your best to avoid. You got to get alignment and synergy and all this cliche stuff. You say, no, you're working on this, let's bring you all together. I said, no, let Tom, Jenny, and Sarah all go solve the problem on their own because we want them to see what's possible when it happens. And we kind of let that happen within the organization for 6 or 8 months. And once people felt empowered, they felt strong using these tools, they felt excited, then we started bringing them together and kind of like reeled it in a little bit. And it worked remarkably. It worked so well that I'm encouraging other organizations who are considering kind of dipping their toes in the water to just dive in head first instead.
So was the task at hand where I have a certain series of tasks or what is in my realm that I'm responsible for? And they were like, maximize, utilize, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or whatever, as a tool to solve problems and kind of an open buffet, just go for it.
That was it. It was buffet. Now we didn't give thousands of people licenses all at once, but we gave a few hundred within the organization licenses to use these tools, encourage them to go and innovate and to experiment and to fail and to share back.
Were they given any particular basic training on, best practices or anything like that?
We did. I actually led those training workshops. I didn't go right away into best practices because staying ahead of this stuff is impossible. I'm an expert. I'll say it confidently. I know my way around these tools. And every time I will speak to others who are using them, I learn something new because I just never thought of asking it for that or I never thought of configuring things that way. So we didn't want to bias people in terms of here's how you write a prompt, or here's how you set up a custom project, or here's the right tool for the project you're doing. We said, go and experiment. But we created online, we used Microsoft Teams in this case, forums where people could share their best practices. And it was before I could reply as the so-called expert with my perspective. When someone asked a question, three other people say, oh, I came across that same problem. Here's how I solved it.
Interesting.
At least three times I can think of in the past few months, someone asked something and said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't actually think you can do that yet. And someone would jump in, actually, yes, you can. Here's how I did it. And I'm like, oh, that's clever. It's really almost an exercise in imagination, creativity, more so than it is in understanding that there's any one way. Now, there are best practices, right? If you tell one of these tools what persona it is, it's the easiest one. You just say, hey, I want you to act like a marketing copywriter with 30 years of advanced copywriting experience, and then you ask it for a copywriting task. You will get better copy out of it on the first try than if you had not kind of given it that ego boost at the start, for lack of better terms. Those best practices are great, but how to solve specific problems, we wanted people to go and experiment, to fail, to try, and to share with one another.
I want to turn into the imagination that you talk about and even the creativity, because it seems to me, here's my thesis, and tear it apart or fortify it where it needs holes to be filled. But I think that from my experience, and I've used a couple of the different ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity to maximize it as a tool, I really have to stop and think, whether strategically or tactically or whatever, just think in a creative and an imaginative way to get it, not like a predetermined result, but I have an idea, an unformed idea in my mind's eye, kind of where I want it to go generally. And, so what's the use of the tool if it's already in my mind's eye? Quicker, faster, might pick up some things on the edges that I didn't think about, or even in the dead center. But that's where my creativity has been challenged in my personal use. Does that communicate to you? Is that your experience?
Absolutely. I think it's understanding, and I know you're starting to, just on a personal and professional level, you yourself are understanding what are the strengths of these tools, what are the, for lack of better terms, weaknesses, and then how do I exploit those on either side? So by weakness, what I mean is it is easy for content to also sound generated. And we are all, whether you're using a piece of technology or your own just reading, we are all starting to become attuned to, hey, that sounds like generated content. And being able to identify that is not a great thing. And it's not about hiding that you use these tools. It's certainly not about that. But we don't want everything to sound robotic, to sound like it was generated by a piece of software, by an algorithm. Where the strengths are, though, is, I'm a futurist. So every year, a handful of organizations will publish, their 10-year outlook on big mega trends. Those could be consumer trends, healthcare trends, policy trends. Those are big, ugly documents. There's one futurist, she publishes an amazing one, but brags that this year's publication was 1,000 pages. And cool, 1,000 pages. That's not helpful. But what happens when I feed a 1,000-page PDF into a tool like this and ask it for implications to my work specifically and get a two-page summary? That is the sheer potential of power. And you can use that in whatever industry you're in.
Yeah.
I tend to have a thesis that the tools are free. And when I say free, when you pay for them, they are paying for themselves. And it's not a commercial for OpenAI or Anthropic or any of the providers out there, but at $20 or $25 or $50 a month, whatever it costs, if you're using these tools and not recovering $25 or $50 a month of value, you're probably just not opening it up. It's not hard to unlock a half hour of productivity with these tools every month, honestly, every day.
Keeping the through line here with the creativity, you and I have been in a conversation. You've been helping, assisting, guiding, being a Sherpa in my utilization at work for the use of these tools, specifically Claude. And it's interesting because I'm the keynote curator and you're a keynote speaker. And the ones that we work for are the buyers, the meeting professionals, the marketing event producers, et cetera. And not recently, since Google, since the internet, a meeting professional can get on the internet and do a search and under topics or whatever category, find speakers and begin to do their search. Now, this isn't a commercial to use me or to go directly to you, but there is a value of somebody to come in and be a guide and be a curator and, vet out and, share why it's a better fit, better than what a Google search could do. And dare I say, even that ChatGPT can do, at least now. I say that reluctantly, but I'm honest and hoping that it probably will change. I think the selection process of speakers utilizing Google or, just a straight up SEO type of search or on ChatGPT or the other tools is very limited right now. And of course, the creativity and imagination are really have to be highly dosed in. In our project, you've helped me utilize our database, our own database, and how I've presented and proposed speakers in a certain type of format and leverage the tool to optimize the construction and I use the word cobbling together of my lists, the curation, the secret sauce, the why a speaker shows up on the list comes from me, human being Seth, right? But the tool that you directed me on it was helping me fortify my already existing ideas about why I recommend them and leveraging the machine, leveraging the ChatGPT. Speak to that a little bit. I was a little bit all over the place there, but I feel that you've been incredibly creative and imaginative in how you've asked me some very pointed questions, and then me in responding as well, trying to do my level best, thinking of how you're going to deploy it. There's no question or observation there. It's just continuing the conversation around creativity.
I mean, let's look at something totally different for a moment. Bear with human resources. A lot of organizations are struggling now on the HR front. And one of the things they're struggling with is that applicants to jobs are using these tools to write their resumes, write cover letters, and doing a very good job with it. So they're applying to more jobs. And it is a tough market in a lot of industries right now. It's almost this war leapfrog game. Let's use AI to screen resumes. And we've been screening resumes using technology for decades. I remember my first job out of undergrad, the state of the art of technologies was keywords. We would use a piece of software, look for certain keywords in a resume. And clever, goofy people like me realized I could write all the keywords. I could open up a paper thesaurus, find the keywords I want, write them in size 1 font in white in the footer of my resume so that I would get ahead of the tool. We've been doing this leapfrog game. It's like doping in professional sports. We've been doing this leapfrog game for a long time. And now the problem I see, the risk I see with something where we are on either side of the equation, where we are using AI to create a resume and polish how we present ourselves, or where we use AI to review resumes, is that we miss the je ne sais quoi, we'll miss the diamond in the rough. These tools do not predict or they do not tell you what is correct. The way foundation models work is they tell you what is most likely. One word at a time. You give it a string of words. Today for lunch, I ate a, and it might fill in the word sandwich.
I just want to stop there because most likely just rings like the mean.
It's exactly that. And so we start to mold. So now what we have is on the applicant side, and there's an analogy here to any industry, but in the HR world or the world of getting a job and finding great people, all of our candidates are being molded to look alike. And our tools are reviewing those for who fits that mold, where your best candidate might be that woman who just doesn't fit the mold, whose resume looks radically different. It's written in red font on blue paper. Silly example, because that'd be pretty much illegible. But how do we find those diamonds in the rough?
Yeah.
That's where that idea of curation, that's where that idea of creativity, curiosity, we can't let go of those. So the challenge will be to not give in when the technology can do some of these things for us, and it will. The technology is evolving faster than anyone can keep up with. Our challenge as human beings, I guess, as the currently only intelligent, at least in this context, species on Earth, is to decide, where do we draw those? I always talk about lines in the digital sand. Where do we draw those? And for you, you've drawn yours at that idea of curation, saying, what I bring is that I have seen these speakers. I've gotten to know them. I know the stuff that's not in their 100-word bio. I know the stuff that's not in their tagline, because that's what I do. And that's what an HR professional does. That's what a great Canada does. They know how to present themselves so they stand out from the crowd, not look like the crowd. And so creativity, curiosity, critical thinking, those are the skills of tomorrow. That is when I work with senior leaders and they're talking about long-term talent strategies. It's no longer about hiring computer science graduates. We still need those skills, those hard skills. We need math and STEM and political science and arts. But it's curiosity, it's skepticism, it's creativity. Those are the future-proof skills. That
critical thinking. I think the new MBA is going to be an MFA, and not so much that you and I are going to become experts in 16th century Portuguese sonnets, or how to write, how to make sculptures or anything like that, but that the education and the intellectual pursuit and the development and the evolution of this creative aspect of the mind, and how to begin to perceive things and, look at things differently and come with new approaches and be open-hearted, open-spirited, I think it's just going to over-index in the future now, not the future now, That was my editorial comment. I want to shift a little bit here. It crossed my mind as I was listening to you about creativity. We all have these smartphones, so we're all photographers, right? I asked a couple of these large language models to critique some of my photos. And this has to do with the mean, right? And in the beginning, the prompt was pretty basic, right? So it came back with stuff. I gave it a shot. I was up in New England in the forest, and it talked about how much I like green and how many shades and different types of green there was. That was the critique. And so I asked it a little bit more, some more pointed about the composition and the lighting and the framing and all this kind of stuff.
Can I guess something?
What's that?
Can I guess something? I'm going to interrupt you for a moment.
Go ahead.
So we're clear, we didn't set this up.
No.
Did the rule of thirds come up?
It did. The rule of thirds came up on the third one when I went into composition and framing, right? But it was so nice until I went in about the fifth or sixth iteration. And I said, be critical as if I'm trying to get a master's in fine arts, and this is a submission for a project, and that, I don't remember exactly. And then they brought it a little bit, but it wasn't until I really gave it, I had to be creative in my instruction on how to critique me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. These tools, again, they're working toward the mean. They are predicting what is most likely, which is why I asked about the rule of thirds. For those who don't know, the rule of thirds is your subject in the photo should be kind of you divide your photo into thirds lengthwise.
Right, like a tic-tac-toe kind of box, right?
You kind of go to the core, the four intersections. One of those four is where you want your subject. But then you look at the greatest photos of all time. You look at an Ansel. So I ran a photography studio for a couple of years. You look at an Ansel Adams, those rules are thrown away. So the rules are there, but sometimes it's in breaking those rules that you create something special. So, and by the way, you take a shot of your kids and you put them on the third, it's a far more interesting composition than in the middle of the photo, 99 times out of 100. But then that one time out of 100, maybe it is really interesting to dead center something. So these tools all work toward, like you said, the mean, toward what is likely. And that is how they are built. That is how foundation of how they work. They call them foundation. We tend not even to call them language models anymore. We call them foundation models, of which there are only a half dozen or so really out there. That's how they work. In understanding that, you can then, I was going to say manipulate, but it's got a negative connotation. You can orchestrate the outcome you want.
Yeah.
And so when you say, Now be critical in your response to me, because it's not trying to make you happy. It's not sucking up to you to try to get your blessing. But generally in our language, we are polite to one another. And it has learned from the collective human language, everything on the internet, essentially, and in books and in media. So it's orchestrating the outcome you want. And that is a skill. Some people call it prompt engineering. I'm not a fan of the term, but saying, here's how I want my output to look. Now you did something else. And when you said, treat me like I am you want a critique from a professor for my MFA. You have now given it a persona.
Right.
Those little methods, I could rhyme off a half dozen of these tiny little things you can do will drastically improve how these tools work. They're not the be all end all of working with AI. In fact, we're all going to get this. Like, we're in a weird moment in time where the collective, we all learning how to use these tools, just like we had to learn email etiquette 20 years ago. We had to learn mobile phone etiquette, which most of us have forgotten somewhere along the way, but there was a time where you didn't take your phone out mid-conversation. We are now learning these basic foundations, but there's so much more you can layer on top of these tools. That's where we haven't scratched the surface yet.
Yeah.
There is, and that's because the tools are immature. We are immature in our use of them. The famous biologist Edward O. Wilson, a huge fan of this, in 2009, pointed out we've got Paleolithic minds, medieval institutions, and godlike technologies. And he said that 50 or 12 years before the world of AI we're in now. He was just talking about the internet, essentially. Even the iPhone was only 2 years old when he made that remarkable quote, this idea of Paleolithic minds, medieval institutions, and godlike technologies. If he were to reassess that, he'd have to create an even bigger spectrum between the ends of sort of how our brains work, how our organizations work, and what technology is doing. When we keep that into context, when we keep that in mind, that's what helps us then work better with the technology.
Yeah. Maybe it's just the moment of the week and the day, but I'm really, I don't want to say stuck, but just harping on this creativity thing. You and I have had conversations. We've shared about our children and, the magic of life and all, some really beautiful connections about family and being parents and stuff like that. My oldest is going into her last year of university in Buenos Aires, and she's studying marketing and branding. She really loves it. She's got a knack for it. What does that mean? She's aware. She pays attention. She's working while she's finishing up her last year. She's working pretty much a full-time job. And I've been talking to her about how to distinguish yourself, the classic, find out what's unique about you, and that's your, out value add or whatever, and that's how you differentiate yourself. But what I've been putting a spotlight on for her is, and I dare use the word original, but creative. It's like, that is going to be the commodity. That is going to be the gold that people bring, because everybody has this rocket fuel in your hand with the large learning models or large language models, and they're learning, the ChatGPT, the Kleenex of AI. But the creativity is where that's the difference maker, and that's how you distinguish yourself. How do you foment that? It's different for everybody. I don't think there's a formula. I don't think there's 7 steps to be a more creative person. There's habits, there's methods that do work, there's types of education and training. I've now beaten the dead horse that we had come out of the barn, but can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, creativity to me goes hand in hand with curiosity. And I think curiosity is the single biggest skill that the collective we, is missing. There's some amazing research that came out of Harvard in 2014. They built something called your CQ, your curiosity quotient. You've got your IQ for your intellect, your EQ for your emotional intelligence. You've got a CQ. The two wildly, and this is a decade ago now, this is definitely pre-AI world. 2 things they found. 1, peak curiosity was at the age of about 5.5. Ask yourself for a moment, what happens around the age of 5.5? What do you start doing?
You start drawing Legos.
But it starts going down from the age of 5. That's the highest most people are in their life.
Yeah.
And I've asked this question of audiences of thousands, and I'll say, at what age do you think the highest is? And it's even funny, our assumption. People put up there and say 3, 4, 6, 7. I've never had someone put up their hand and say like 43.
Right.
Or
18.
like, so from the moment we start formal education, aka school, around the age of 5, when we enter the first grade or kindergarten, curiosity goes down. Why does it go down? The theory is you go from a lot of one-on-one attention from mom and dad to one-on-many attention from a teacher who's got 30 kids in the class. So when you ask why over and over and over, you don't get an answer to all those. So it goes down, but the cool thing that they found was you can train curiosity. There are exercises, workshops, there's ways of thinking, there's books you can read to bolster it. But the really cool part was they found through a massive study of Fortune 500 companies, people with a high CQ were more likely to be successful in the career. Now, they measured success in the career as being promoted in a corporate hierarchy. There are many other ways that you can measure success. This was a measurable metric for it. CQ was a better predictor than even your IQ in terms of kind of that corporate growth career trajectory.
Interesting.
So the person who knows how to ask the question, and this is kind of the joking conclusion here, the person who knows how to ask the question is more likely to get promoted than the person who knows the answer to the question.
Right.
Curiosity is what we need more than anything else. And we can't let these tools take it away from us, because that is, to me, that's the risk. There's lots of risks when it comes to AI. There's cybersecurity risk, which we could talk another hour about. There are environmental impact risks, which I've got my own theories about, and I'm less concerned because I think that there are paths forward on that front. The biggest risk is that it reshapes how we work and takes away the thing that is innately human from each of us and moves us all to that mean, moves us all to that average and that center, at which point it gets boring. Because a silly example, I don't think an AI would have created, I'm a big fan of Lin-Manuel Miranda, Hamilton. Who would have created that? There's no world where not having an input that you would have fed the biography of Alexander Hamilton to an AI that would have created what Hamilton became as a production. And I'm thinking about that because of the 10-year anniversary of that production. Creativity, curiosity are at the center of our shared success.
Yeah. Amen to that. I mean, there is like a guttural primordial aversion, at least I call it as my aesthetic or whatever, of these doom scrolling things. They all look, it could be a 10-year-old playing basketball, a 40-year-old lifting weights, it all looks the same to me. It kind of looks the same to me, honestly, you know?
I don't know if kids learn to pose. I don't do it, but I've seen it like when I'm traveling and you see families out kind of tours of me and you see kids 5, 6, 7, 8, and they do the thing where like one leg's forward and a hand on the hip. And when did our kids learn how to do that? That is, it's to all look alike. And yes, there are aesthetic reasons why that angle works better for a photograph and how our lenses pick up information. But that kind of stuff terrifies me.
It does. Molding. It does. Well, listen, Ramy, we could go on and on forever. I appreciate your thoughts, your insights, your introspection, your willingness to follow along on my meandering questions / observations for this. And for our audience, I know they've been listening intently. Just thanks so much for continuing to come back and listen. And this is where you just get great conversations that provide ideas and a path forward to improve, every aspect of your life, professionally and personally, and family and parenthood and the like. So thank you all. And Ramy, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Seth.
You got it. Everybody, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.